the heart of this nation, under skies so blue,
there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true.
From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to, cut through the noise and get you the insights you actually need to be well informed.
Exactly.
And today, we are plunging into a really pressing topic. It's more than just local news. It's hit the national stage squarely. We're talking about the challenges facing Washington, D.C.
Yeah, the nation's capital. And it's fascinating, isn't it, when issues like public safety or urban decay happen there, they just don't stay local for long.
Not at all. If they escalate, they become part of this urgent national debate. It's like the symbolic heart of the government is seen as being unwell, and that gets everyone talking.
It really does. It becomes a symbol, a powerful one, for maybe broader anxieties or political narratives. That's kind of what we're exploring today, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's our mission for you in this deep dive. We're going to sift through all these recent high-profile discussions, the proposed interventions about crime, cleanliness, the whole physical condition of D.C.
Right. We want to pull out the key nuggets of knowledge, the important insights from the sources we've got.
Exactly. Helping you understand not just what's being said, but, why it matters. The bigger picture.
Consider it your fast track, maybe, to getting up to speed on this whole unfolding situation.
We'll try to keep it engaging, maybe find some surprising facts, perhaps even a little humor where appropriate, though the topic is serious.
Okay, so our main source material for this deep dive, it comes from a recent piece on townhall.com.
Right.
And it really zeroes in on a significant upcoming announcement about D.C. from a prominent public figure. It also sort of gathers up related things that were happening earlier in August 2025.
So it gives us a specific lens, a particular viewpoint, to understand the current conversation. It highlights the events and perspectives shaping this narrative.
That's right. It's one perspective, but it's the one driving this specific news cycle we're looking at.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The big catalyst, the event throwing D.C.'s issues onto the national stage, is this planned press conference. We're talking about President Donald Trump's stated plan for a briefing. And it's scheduled for today, Monday, August 11th, 2025, 10 a.m. Eastern.
And the location is key too, isn't it? The press briefing room at the White House.
Exactly. Very specific time, very specific place. That screams major statement, doesn't it? It feels like a deliberate move to elevate these issues.
Absolutely. And what's really crucial here, I think, is the precision of the topics he announced he'd cover. This came from his Truth Social post.
It wasn't just a general, I'm concerned about D.C. kind of thing.
No, not at all. He explicitly listed crime, beautification, and then this phrase, ending the crime, murder, and death in our nation's capital.
Wow, stark language.
Very. And also cleanliness and the general physical renovation and condition of our once beautiful and well-maintained capital.
So really specific points. Crime, aesthetics, safety, the physical state.
That level of detail, using those specific terms, it tells you right away this isn't just a casual remark. It's a targeted set of concerns presented with, a certain intensity.
And that's where it gets really interesting, right? Using that platform, the White House briefing room, to talk about local crime.
Even if it is a capital city.
Right, even the capital.
Yeah.
Addressing it with such detail. What does that signal? It feels like more than just a statement. It feels strategic.
It has to be. It immediately elevates D.C.'s problems to what's being framed as a national priority, maybe even in this narrative, a national emergency.
It suggests the problems are seen as so urgent, so symbolic, that they demand attention from the highest levels of political discourse.
It stops being just a city problem, doesn't it? It gets framed as something reflecting on the whole country.
And needing, perhaps, a top-down solution.
Yeah, and using that specific venue, the press briefing room, which is usually for huge federal policy or, national security stuff.
It just amplifies the perceived gravity.
Totally. It sends a message. D.C.'s issues aren't just local governance hiccups. They're seen as having national implications, maybe even reflecting on the state of the nation itself.
And the language you mentioned, ending the crime, murder, and death, that's not just descriptive, is it? It's loaded.
Oh, absolutely. It carries emotional weight. It paints a really stark, almost apocalyptic picture. That kind of rhetoric often aims to push for immediate, decisive action.
Maybe even radical action.
Could be. It creates this sense of an existential threat that only, a strong, focused intervention can fix.
And critically, this isn't happening in isolation. This press conference announcement, it didn't just appear out of thin air.
No, the timing is important.
Our source makes it very clear that this is following weeks of shootings and violence in Washington, D.C. That's the immediate context.
Right. It provides that on-the-ground backdrop for the urgency for why this high-profile statement is happening now. It's presented as a direct response to a perceived crisis getting worse.
So to really get a feel for this, let's dive into some specific incidents mentioned in the source. These seem to be fueling the concern and setting the stage.
Okay. One really significant event happened just the night before this announcement was flagged. August 10th, 2025.
Okay.
This was near the Navy Yard Ballpark Metro stop. Usually a pretty busy area, right?
Yeah, lots going on there normally.
Well, the report details shots fired at about 9:26 p.m. Police responded quickly. A suspect was arrested. A gun recovered. Standard procedure in that sense.
Okay, a shooting incident, sadly not unheard of in cities. But what makes this one stand out in the source?
It's the other stuff happening right there at the same time. That's what's striking.
What kind of stuff?
Well, according to this tweet from Wed Lyman, which the article quotes, there was, quote, a group of 100-plus youths gathered in the park, launching fireworks, riding dirt bikes, and scootering on electric vehicles.
Wow, over 100 youths, fireworks and dirt bikes simultaneously with the shooting nearby?
Yeah, you can just imagine the scene, right? The noise, the chaos, the sheer number of people. It paints a really vivid picture of, well, disruption alongside serious violence.
It sounds like more than just a crime incident. It sounds like an environment of disorder.
That seems to be the implication. And adding another layer, this wasn't just handled by local D.C. police.
Oh, who else was involved?
The tweet specifically notes the presence of multiple federal agencies, including the FBI and HSI Homeland Security investigations on the scene after the incident.
FBI and HSI for a local shooting and youth disturbance. That is interesting.
It really is. It raises questions, doesn't it? Why federal agencies, usually focused on bigger stuff like national security or cross-state crime, stepping into what looks like a chaotic local scene?
It suggests the perceived scale of the problem, right? Maybe it's seen as beyond what local authorities can handle alone. Or maybe that's the narrative being pushed.
That's certainly one interpretation conveyed by highlighting the federal presence. It hints at a breakdown of order serious enough to warrant that higher level of intervention.
Exactly. It takes it beyond just a local police matter. So this Navy Yard incident, as presented, it's got multiple layers: gun violence, a large disruptive youth gathering, and federal agency involvement.
It's a potent combination. It really feeds into that narrative of escalating crisis, maybe even suggesting the city's problems aren't just isolated incidents, but something more pervasive. Almost like parts of the city are seen as, well, spiraling out of control.
A sense of being under siege, perhaps, in certain areas. That seems to be the feeling the source conveys.
I think so. And you can see how one dramatic incident like this, with all those visual and auditory elements, fireworks, dirt bikes, gunshots, can really capture public attention and amplify fears about safety.
It becomes a symbol.
A powerful one. It makes the abstract idea of rising crime feel very real, very immediate, very chaotic. It's a narrative amplifier.
Okay, so that's one major incident setting the scene. But the source highlights another one too, doesn't it? One that focuses more on the human impact.
Yes, a few days earlier, August 5th, this one is quite harrowing. It details how a gang of about a dozen young men tried to assault a woman in her car at night in D.C.
A dozen young men against one woman in her car at night. That's terrifying just to imagine.
It is. And what makes this story particularly impactful, the way it's told in the source, is the intervention that happened next.
Okay.
It talks about an ex-DOGE staffer, that's Department of Justice,
Right.
who the source refers to as Big Balls, intervened. He ran to defend her and was severely beaten to the point of concussion, but he saved her.
Wow. So a bystander, a former DOJ person, jumped in and got seriously hurt protecting someone.
Exactly. It's presented as this act of heroism against overwhelming odds with a real personal cost. It's clearly meant to be more than just a crime report.
It humanizes the problem instantly, doesn't it? Takes it away from statistics and puts it right there. A violent attack, a brave defense, a serious injury.
Absolutely. It serves as a powerful, visceral illustration of the perceived crime problem. It's the kind of story designed to grab you, to make you feel the threat and maybe demand change.
Yeah, that kind of personal story, that sacrifice, it sticks with you. It can shape public perception way more than crime stats sometimes. It creates that feeling of something must be done.
And it seems this particular incident really resonated, sparking further calls for action that we'll get into, including some pretty radical ideas about how D.C. should be run.
Okay, so these two incidents, Navy Yard's chaos and this violent carjacking attempt, they paint a stark picture, an immediate crisis.
Right. But interestingly, the solutions being floated by figures like Trump aren't just about more policing or arrests. The conversation broadens out.
Which brings us to that beautification angle you mentioned earlier. That was part of his announced topics.
Yes, and when he uses that term beautification, it's clear from the source he means more than just catching criminals.
What else does it cover?
It includes cleanliness and the general physical renovation and condition of the Capitol. It's about how the city looks and feels, its physical state, not just the crime rate.
So a much broader approach, tackling urban decay alongside crime?
Exactly. It expands the whole idea of public safety and urban well-being. It suggests this holistic view where, physical decay may be homelessness, hinted at by words like tents, squalor, and just general untidiness.
They're all linked.
They're presented as being deeply intertwined with crime and with civic pride. The idea is that these aren't separate issues. They're all symptoms of a deeper problem.
It almost sounds like a version of the broken windows theory, right? That visible signs of disorder encourage more serious crime.
It definitely echoes that. From this viewpoint, cleaning up the physical environment isn't just cosmetic. It's seen as a direct way to reduce crime and restore a sense of order.
And he's very clear about the goal. He wants to make D.C. truly great again. That phrase again.
And restore it to how it supposedly was before the tents, squalor, filth, and crime.
That language really sets up a stark contrast, doesn't it? An idealized past versus a degraded present.
Absolutely. It frames the situation as a fall from grace, suggesting D.C.'s current state is a major deviation from its intended role and appearance as the nation's capital.
So what does this broader vision imply about the challenges facing D.C., according to this perspective? It's not just about crime stats, clearly.
No, it implies something more systemic, a belief that the city has fundamentally declined. Those words, tents, squalor, filth, and crime, they're very evocative, meant to paint a picture of widespread neglect.
Suggesting the city is kind of unworthy of its status right now.
That seems to be the implication, that the problem isn't just isolated acts, but a general breakdown in civic order, aesthetics, and management. And therefore, it needs a comprehensive, almost restorative approach.
Going beyond just policing to fix the city's fabric, its appearance, its social order.
Yeah, restoring the capital to its perceived rightful place, both physically and symbolically.
And this vision, this call for beautification and restoration, it seems to come with an implicit critique of how things are being managed now, especially resources.
Definitely. And this is where he introduces that really interesting financial comparison involving the Federal Reserve building.
Right. Tell us about that.
He makes this very direct statement quoted in the source. If the federal government will spend billions of dollars renovating the Federal Reserve, then it will also clean up Washington, D.C.
Okay, that's a pretty direct challenge.
It is. It's framed as a challenge to spending priorities and efficiency, essentially asking if billions are available for one federal building's facelift, why aren't similar resources directed effectively to the overall condition of the capital city itself?
It highlights a perceived misallocation, maybe.
That's the clear implication. It's a compelling contrast, designed to make you question where taxpayer money is going.
And he doesn't stop there, does he? He actually criticizes the Fed renovation project itself.
For very specifically, he talks about the $3.1 billion allocated for it and claims it could have been done in a far more elegant and time-sensitive manner for $50 to $100 million.
50 to 100 million instead of 3.1 billion. That's a huge difference.
A massive difference. And he goes further, asserting his proposed cheaper way would have actually been better and saved $3 billion traffic jams and never-ending construction.
So not just cheaper, but better and less disruptive. That's a bold claim suggesting serious waste and inefficiency in the current system.
It's a really potent point for you, the listener, to chew on because it does a couple of things rhetorically. First, it slams perceived government waste and priorities. Linking the Fed building cost to D.C.'s problems suggests an opportunity cost money spent there could have been used here and maybe used better.
Right. Look how inefficient this is. Imagine what those resources could do for the whole city if managed properly.
Exactly. And second, it subtly plays up his own background as a businessman, a developer. It implies he has the expertise to manage big projects efficiently, unlike, perhaps, the bureaucracy he's criticizing.
So it frames the solution as not just policy, but also competent management and fiscal responsibility, getting more bang for the buck.
Precisely. It's like saying, look at this waste. If we just manage money smarter, we can fix the city's problems.
Which naturally leads to the question, if it's not a lack of money, but maybe mismanagement or misplaced priorities, then who's accountable for DC's current state?
And this brings us right to the critique of local leadership, specifically Mayor Muriel Bowser.
How does he assess her in the source?
It's interesting. He starts by saying she's a good person who has tried. Seems like faint praise, almost.
Yeah, there's usually a but after that kind of phrase.
And there is. He immediately follows with, she has been given many chances, and the crime numbers get worse, and the city only gets dirtier and less attractive.
Ouch. So tried, but failed. That's the message.
That's the clear implication. It's less a critique and more an indictment of perceived effectiveness over time.
And it highlights that tricky dynamic in D.C., doesn't it? The balance between federal oversight and local responsibility. What does that phrase, given many chances, really suggest?
It suggests a timeline of failure, basically, that local governance under her leadership has had ample opportunity to fix things but hasn't delivered.
Which then logically frames the need, or maybe the justification, for federal intervention.
Exactly. It constructs this narrative where local authorities are portrayed as unable or ineffective, thus opening the door for a higher authority, the federal government, or perhaps a specific federal figure to step in.
Painting a picture where local efforts, even if well-intentioned, a good person who has tried, just aren't cutting it.
Right. It posits the problems are too big, too entrenched, maybe just too mismanaged locally. So it subtly shifts the responsibility and primes the audience to think, okay, maybe a top-down federal solution is necessary now.
Because the local approach has failed.
That's the argument being presented.
Yeah.
That the issues now transcend normal city governance and require that higher authority.
And building on that idea of needing decisive action, he then compares this potential D.C. intervention to another situation where he claims success.
Yes, he draws a direct parallel to his administration's handling of the border.
What exactly does he say?
The quote is very direct. Just like I took care of the border, where you had 0 illegals coming across last month from millions the year before, I will take care of our cherished capital, and we will make it truly great again.
Okay, that's a very bold claim about the border statistics, first off.
It is. And as you said earlier, our job here is just to report the claim as made in the source, not debate its specific accuracy.
Right. But focusing on the comparison itself, what does linking the border to D.C. imply about the kind of taking care he envisions for the capital?
It suggests a very decisive, maybe even aggressive, certainly results-focused approach, the kind that prioritizes immediate, visible outcomes.
Like the approach to the border.
Exactly. It's meant to reassure people that the same strong hand, the same methods that supposedly solved one huge, complex problem can fix DC's problems too. It's a promise of dramatic results, fast.
Leveraging a past claim to build confidence for a future action. It frames the solution as being about strong will and executive power.
Definitely. It acts as a rhetorical power play, aiming to show a can-do attitude. By linking D.C. to the border, regardless of how one views the border situation, he positions his approach as uniquely effective, maybe the only viable one.
Simplifying complex issues down to needing a strong leader.
That's often how such analogies work. They present a clear path forward, rally support around a centralized, forceful approach, implying the crisis demands nothing less than that kind of command and control response.
And all these calls for decisive action, the critiques of local leadership, they seem to be opening up a much bigger, more fundamental debate about DC's governance structure itself.
Absolutely. And that's where another very high-profile voice jumps in, Elon Musk.
What did he say?
Following that specific violent carjacking attempt on August 5th, the one with the ex-DOJ staffer intervention.
Right, the one that was very visceral.
Musk made a very short, very pointed statement on social media. It is time to federalize D.C.
Wow. Federalize D.C. That's a huge statement. Not just federal intervention, but full federalization.
It's a radical suggestion, yeah. And linking it directly to that specific crime incident shows how these events can trigger calls for really fundamental change. It suggests, for some, the current system isn't just flawed, it's broken beyond repair.
So what could federalized D.C. actually mean? We're talking about potentially dissolving the elected local government.
It could imply a whole spectrum of things. At one end, Maybe significantly increased federal oversight over police, schools, city services, maybe even making the mayor a federal appointee.
Like it used to be, in a way.
In some ways, yes. Or, at the other extreme, it could mean a complete restructuring, essentially turning D.C. into something more like a federal territory, stripping away most or all of its self-governance.
And why would someone like Musk, not typically involved in city politics, make such a suggestion?
Well, his involvement shows how these issues, when they become dramatic enough, can attract attention from unexpected places. It taps into that deep frustration, the perception that local authorities just can't manage the escalating crime and disorder.
So it's basically saying, local control has failed, give it back to the federal government entirely.
That's the essence of the call, yes. It's a pretty stark dismissal of local autonomy, arguing the current model is inherently incapable of ensuring safety and order in the capital.
Which raises enormous questions for you, the listener, to think about. Is federalization actually viable? Is it desirable?
What would it mean for the people who live in D.C.? They currently have some self-governance, though they famously lack voting representation in Congress and often push for more autonomy, like statehood.
Right, so this would be a huge step in the opposite direction. And what about D.C.'s status as a symbol of democracy? How would direct federal rule impact that?
It's a massive contradiction, potentially, and it reignites that really old debate going back to the founding of the country.
About D.C.'s unique status.
Exactly. It was created as a federal district, deliberately separate from any state, so the federal government wouldn't be beholden to a state. But how much self-rule should the people living there have?
That's always been the tension.
Always. Balancing local determination with its role as the nation's capital. And whenever things like crime or perceived mismanagement flare up, these fundamental questions about its governance resurface.
So Musk's comment, while maybe jarring, isn't entirely out of the blue historically. It taps into this long-standing tension.
Precisely. It forces us to ask, how much autonomy should a capital city have when its condition is seen, rightly or wrongly, as reflecting on the whole nation? Where does the ultimate responsibility lie?
Local control versus national interest, played out right there on the streets of D.C.
It's a fundamental conflict.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, we've traced this intense, high-level focus on Washington, D.C.'s crime and condition. It's being driven by the significant planned announcement.
And fueled by these specific concerning incidents, the Navy Yard chaos, the violent carjacking attempt, the heroic intervention, they all feed into this narrative of a city in crisis.
Right. And we've seen the proposed solutions go beyond just policing. There's this talk of beautification, renovation, tackling the physical state of the city.
Alongside sharp critiques of current spending priorities, using that Federal Reserve building as a comparison point.
Which leads to questions of accountability, criticism of local leadership like Mayor Bowser, and claims of past success like the border comparison being offered as a template for future action.
And then, bubbling underneath, or maybe bursting through, is that more radical debate sparked by figures like Elon Musk. Should D.C. be federalized altogether? It highlights these deep tensions between local autonomy and calls for federal oversight.
It really is a complex picture, with problems and solutions being viewed from very different angles in the sources we looked at.
Absolutely.
So as we leave you to think about all this, perhaps consider this. We hear these impassioned calls for intervention, for dramatic changes in our capital. But what truly defines a great city, especially today with all the complex urban challenges we face?
And flowing from that, what level of governance, local, federal, or maybe some new kind of hybrid we haven't even thought of, is actually best equipped to deliver that safety, that civic pride, that prosperity? Especially when problems seem to be escalating and the national spotlight is suddenly very, very bright.
Something to definitely chew on. A lot unfolding, and we'll keep watching. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.